gonna change your day with signs and wonders, miracles to perform. God is gonna bless you for just holding on. I feel breakthrough coming your way. It's a mighty move of God. It's gonna change your day. With signs and wonders, miracles to perform. God is gonna bless you for just holding on. Just hold on. Change is coming. I feel it in the air. It's in the atmosphere. Just hold on. Change is coming. A move of God is on the way. You've been expecting a change in your life, looking for your midnight to turn into sunshine. It's gonna happen. You wait and see. All things are possible to them that believe. Just hold on. Change is coming. I feel it in the air. It's in the atmosphere. Just hold on. Change is coming. A move of God is on the way. You've been expecting a change in your life, looking for your midnight to turn into sunshine. It's gonna happen. You wait and see. All things are possible to them that believe. You've been expecting a change in your life, looking for your midnight to turn to sunshine. It's gonna happen. You wait and see. All things are possible to them that believe. Just hold on. Change is coming. I feel it in the air. It's in the atmosphere. Just hold on. Change is coming. A move of God is on the way. 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 A move of God is on the way.
Please help me in thanking Dr. Donna Cox and the Ebony Heritage Singers again for sharing such a beautiful song. Before we go any further, I just wanted to ask you if you could please just check the jacket that you picked up from downstairs and see if maybe you accidentally picked up someone else's jacket. And if you have, maybe take it to the back of the room to Andrea Wade here, and we'll make sure the owner gets their jacket. So thank you. Well, good evening. My name is Patty Alvarez, and I am the director of the Office of Multicultural Affairs. And on behalf of the University of Dayton, as well as the UD Speaker Series, I would like to thank you for joining us for tonight's Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. commemorative address and tribute to Father Paul Marshall, former University of Dayton rector. The mission of the UD Speaker Series is to serve as a catalyst for purposeful and critical discussion of contemporary issues through dynamic public presentations and related programming. I am confident that this evening's speaker will contribute powerfully to the mission of the series. Our next speaker will be Sister Helen Pragine, who will be speaking on February 26th at 7 p.m. in the Recplex. We hope that you'll be able to join us. At this time, I would like to ask everyone to please take a moment to silence any noise-making devices. Thank you. Now, I would like to welcome Brother Joseph Camus to join me here at the podium to offer a tribute to Father Paul Marshall. Brother Joe has been a member of the Society of Mary for 48 years, serving mostly in secondary education and administration. A graduate of the University of Dayton and John Carroll University, he has been a teacher, principal, superintendent, assistant provincial, and provincial of Marianas provinces. Brother Joe entered the Society of Mary with Father Paul Marshall and was a close friend. His love for the Marianists goes back to his high school days, where the Marianist brothers and priests had a profound effect on him because of their belief in a discipleship of equals, common prayer, and community living. Brother Joe.
Good evening. And thank you for inviting me to the University of Dayton Speaker Series to share a few thoughts and remembrances of Father Paul Marshall. On behalf of all of us, I also welcome Mrs. Iris Brown, Father Paul's sister, and her husband James, who are with us this evening. Thank you for coming. Mary Oliver writes, "What is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?" Father Paul Marshall was a Catholic, an ordained minister, and a Marianist. He was a member of the Black Catholic Clergy Caucus of Bread for the World and ministered as the urban corps director here in Dayton. He taught and ministered at Chaminade Julienne Catholic High School, Cathedral Latin School in Cleveland, pastor of St. Aloysius Parish in Cleveland, professor and rector at the University of Dayton. His last ministry was the assistant for temporalities for the province of the United States. He was a brother, a Marianist religious, our colleague, our friend, and most of all, our companion on the journey. In many ways, his life was wild and oh so precious. My association with Paul began in high school back in 1961. It followed through our entering the Marianist novitiate together, and then as faculty members at Cathedral Latin School in Cleveland. We came back to serve as members of the Provincial Council in 2010, and to live together in St. Louis these past 5 years. We went together with Father Marty, our provincial, to India. Paul grew up in a culture of prejudice and was always a minority member of his city, his faith, institutions he ministered at, and his Marianist religious order. He seemed to always transcend and include, transcend and include, transcend and include. His passion for social justice stemmed from the journey the African American people have taken through hundreds and hundreds of years. It was in his blood, but so were the 7 principles of Catholic social teaching. Paul was constantly working for social justice, not in a mean sort of get-even way, but of the way of Jesus, with compassion, patience, diligence, and faithfulness. It wasn't that he was not angry with the ills of society. He was, but he knew how to confront them, and yet still respecting the people he dealt with. We need a lot more of that in today's society. Paul was not afraid to point out injustices in the American system and in institutions where he served, but always did it with calmness as if coming from a warm and loving heart. He was so proud of President Barack Obama's election, but was not complacent either. I remember going to see the movie The Butler with Paul and seeing tears in his eyes as he saw the transformation of people and the good that sometimes comes from hardship. In hearing Paul talk about how difficult it was seeing 10 years a slave and bringing once again to his mind the lack of respect for human life and dignity of the individual that the African American people endured for so many years. That hurt him so very, very much, but it gave him greater passion to work for justice. Paul's emphasis on community and the need for participation can be seen in his efforts to establish the Marianist Education Associates here at the University of Dayton, giving people the opportunity to gather, share their faith, and turn that faith into action. Paul's many years at St. Aloysius in Cleveland gave him the opportunity to serve the poor and the most vulnerable in our society, along with educating the middle class in their responsibilities to work for justice and therefore peace. It was at St. Al's where Paul's heart was mostly felt in working for justice. He received many awards and recognitions for his efforts, but didn't want recognition for himself. At one award ceremony I went to in Cleveland, Paul talked about everyone else who helped, who contributed, but not about himself. And when we were cleaning out his room at Solvay Community in St. Louis, we saw plaque after plaque after plaque after plaque of awards that he received and we knew nothing about. He didn't tell us. He didn't tell us. I was visiting him one Sunday in Cleveland and sat in the front row of the church while he was the main celebrant. His short homily, did I say short? He told me that in the African American community, it was expected that the priest give long homilies, because if you didn't have a lot to share, you must not be very good. Paul was very good. I said that Paul never got angry, but that was not entirely true. Paul loved his Cleveland Browns, and they gave him so many opportunities to be angry. The drive, the fumble were just two of these events, along with the past 52 years without an NFL championship. Speaking of sports, imagine this. Early in the morning, before morning prayer in community at Cathedral Latin, a group of us, including Paul, would get up early and go out jogging for an hour. Yes, Paul did jog. Oh, the days when we would have energy. That didn't last too long. We also would play basketball in the gym late at night before we prepared the next day's classes. We would play half court, and Paul had this great jump shot. Well, he didn't really jump, but the ball would go through the hoops. Nothing but net. We would take a break to have a cigarette and then continue. Yikes, we were young and dumb. Paul had a lifelong affair with food, and there was nothing better for him than to cook and gather people around the table. Through his cooking, he brought people together, and his dishes were just delightful. At the Solvay Community, he was in charge of the kitchen, and he fed us well. Oh, so well. Paul's passion for justice and his efforts to help others were the hallmark of his life. As the assistant for temporalities, he was the contact for the Marianist Social Justice Collaborative. He was the contact for the Assistant for Social Justice, Peace, and the Integrity of Creation, and the Marianist NGO at the United Nations. He was proud of the efforts that the Marianists were making in this effort, but he always, always wanted to do more. I miss Paul greatly. There is a hole in our community at Solvay and in the Marianist order, and I would say in this world, without him. We walk by his room every day and we see a smiling face working on our community books or reading something in preparation for a homily or a presentation. Only he's not there. His presence was a gift to the church, a gift to the Marianist, this university, and those he served. In the second last day in India, Paul was in the north of India, and I was in the south. And we were to meet in New Delhi the next day. He wrote me a text which he said, "I hope I can find you at the airport, as it will be so good to go home." Paul's one and precious life was completed, and he went home. Pray for us, Paul, that our passion for justice and peace may match yours. And let the people say, amen. Paul also loved to sing. We would go to the college church in St. Louis for a Saturday evening mass, and especially when there was an African-American song, he would really bellow it out. But not in the way of loud. It was beautiful. And not more than a few times, many times, at the end of Mass, people would turn around and say to him, "Wow, you have a wonderful voice." I said, "What about me?" They didn't say anything. But because he loved music, because he loved singing, I want to bring back the Ebony Heritage Singers to perform another selection for us.
Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. For the battle is not yours. He promised he would be the God of victory. For the battle is not yours, it's the Lord's. Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. For the battle is not yours. He promised he would be the God of victory. For the battle is not yours, it's the Lord's.
You can make it through the day if you just hold on, standing on the promises of God. You can make it through the night if you just believe He'll fight for you. You can make it through the day if you just hold on, standing on the promises of God. You can make it through the night if you just believe He'll fight for you.
So don't let the darkness drive out the light, for the Lord will fight for the souls of the righteous. Don't be afraid, neither be thou dismayed, for the Lord will see you through. So don't let the darkness drive out the light, for the Lord will fight for the souls of the righteous. Don't be afraid, neither be thou dismayed, for the Lord will see you
Thank you again to the Ebony Heritage Singers, and thank you to Brother Joe for sharing such beautiful words regarding Father Paul Marshall. I would now like to welcome Dr. Cecilia Moore to the podium to introduce Sister Jamie Phelps. Dr. Moore has an undergraduate degree from Sweetbriar College in History and Religion, as well as a master's degree and doctoral degree from the University of Virginia in American Religious History. She has taught at the University of Dayton in the Department of Religious Studies since 1996, and at Xavier University of Louisiana since 1998, where she currently is the Associate Director of the degree program for the Institute for Black Catholic Studies. Her area of specialization is U.S. Catholic history, and currently she is working on the history of Black conversion to Roman Catholicism in the 20th century. Dr. Moore?
Good evening to everyone. I want to first just begin by saying thank you to the Diversity series for inviting Sister Jamie because Sister's been here since Saturday, and we have had the opportunity over the past few days to do a lot of the things that I think Father Marshall would have loved to have done with us. We went to see Sister Francesca Thompson, who is an African-American Oldenburg sister who is 82 years old. We went to see her on Saturday right after Sister got here, and we stayed with her for a couple of hours visiting. And then Sister came to St. Benedict on Sunday, and people at the parish loved getting to see Sister Jamie again. And we've eaten several delicious meals, which I know Father Marshall would have enjoyed. And everybody in our department, Sister, who had lunch with you today, everybody who I've seen since we've had lunch has remarked on how much it was great to get to meet you and know you for those who hadn't had the opportunity to ever meet you. But also it was really great for our department because we don't often get a chance to sit down with each other and hear from each other about what we're doing and what we're interested in. And Sister Jamie conducted what she calls her Inquisition, and I just remind you she's a Dominican, and the Dominicans were in charge of the Inquisition. So she was very good at, very, very good at inquiring, and she inquires because she really loves people, and I don't know anybody who probably loves people and just being in the company of old friends, and she always makes new friends as much as Sister Jamie. So really, thank you so much for bringing Sister here. Sister Jamie was not only a friend of Father Marshall's, but together over the years they collaborated on many things for the African American Catholic community, and she also was one of his professors. So it's very appropriate that she delivered tonight's address. Since 1959, Sister Dr. Jamie Phelps has been a member of the Adrian Dominicans. She holds a Bachelor's of Science in Sociology with a concentration in Biology and Mathematics from Siena Heights College, a Master's of Social Work from the University of Illinois, an MA in Theology with a focus on liturgy from St. John's University, and a Ph.D. in Systematic Theology from the Catholic University of America. Sister Jamie is both one of the first African-American women to earn a doctorate in Catholic theology, and she is also one of the leading American theologians to influence Catholic theology and pastoral practice since the Second Vatican Council. She's contributed to local and international theological conversations and projects throughout the United States and Canada, in Brazil, Jamaica, Nigeria, South Africa, Zimbabwe, and Italy. She's edited 2 books, Black and Catholic, The Challenging Gift of Black Folk, and Stamped with the Image of God, African Americans as God's Image in Black. In addition to these texts, she's published more than 50 theological articles on issues such as the mission of the church, evangelization, enculturation, Christology, and spirituality in multiple journals such as the Bible Today, Missiology, the New Theology Review, Theological Studies, and the U.S. Catholic Historian, and also in very important books such as Spiritual Traditions of the Contemporary Church, A Troubling in My Soul, Womanist Reflections on Evil and Suffering, Taking Down Our Harps, Black Catholics in the United States, Black Faith and Public Talk, and the Spirit in the Church in the World. Now, in her earliest days as a Dominican, Sister Jamie was a Catholic school teacher in her hometown of Chicago. And I have actually met people who were Sister Jamie's students back then. Now, she learned early on, this was the day when Catholic schools were busting at the seams, and she had classes packed with more than 60 students. And she learned early on that she couldn't continue screaming. So she perfected a low modulated tone and a piercing stare to call her students to attention, and that has been her recipe for success. She's had a long career in Catholic education, teaching first in the junior high schools in Chicago, teaching in graduate schools such as the Catholic Theological Union and the Institute for Black Catholic Studies, and also undergraduate students at Loyola University Chicago and Xavier University of Louisiana. At the Catholic Theological Union, Sister Jamie was the founding director of the Augustus Tolton Pastoral Ministry Program, which this year will celebrate its 25th year. The Tolton program prepares Black Catholic laypersons for ministry in the Archdiocese of Chicago. The University of Dayton was graced by Sister Jamie's presence as Distinguished Visiting Professor of Theology in the spring of 2003. From 2003 to 2011, Sister Jamie held the Katherine Drexel Chair in Systematic Theology and was director of the Institute for Black Catholic Studies at Xavier University of Louisiana, an institute for which she was a major consultant when it was founded in 1982. Now, I am not one of the fortunate ones who was one of Sister Jamie's students, but I did talk to some of Sister Jamie's students in preparation, and I have a few things that they say about Sister Jamie and why she was such an influential and memorable professor. And I remind you, Father Marshall was Sister Jamie's student. They credit her with introducing them to the documents of Vatican II by showing them the power and the grace of those documents. They note how Sister Jamie truly loves to engage ideas, and even if that means disagreeing with her in a heated way, Sister Jamie is known to say, "Come back at me." She loves to say that to you because she really wants you to get your ideas out there. Sometimes you change her mind and sometimes she changes yours. They also say that they learned from Sister Jamie why it is so very important not to cut corners when learning theology or anything for that matter. They say they learned from Sister Jamie that it is never okay to water down your education because, quote, Sister Jamie says, we must be the best in order to do what we do as theologians, because the people of God deserve the best. Sister Jamie, it's with sheer joy and deep appreciation that we welcome you to the University of Dayton, and we thank you for everything that you'll share with us tonight.
I told her that's my eulogy. I would say that I'm very happy to be here. I'm a little nervous because I don't know why. It's stupid, but anyway. I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad to experience the university. I'm glad I came early because when I was here for that visiting semester, I noticed something special about the University of Dayton, and coming back these many years later, it's still here. Your sense of hospitality is outstanding. And hospitality, I think, is a virtue in today's world. So I want to applaud you for your sense of hospitality, really and truly. But anyway, we need to get on because you want to get out. I actually wrote 2 speeches. That's why I'm sort of nervous, because I don't know which one's coming out. But we do have a PowerPoint that's under control me, and I think I need a napkin. Do you? A Kleenex. Okay. I wrote several visions of the text, but I finally did, let me do a very simple thing. I'm not an expert on Dr. King, but I was intrigued with the idea of looking at Catholic social teachings, which is sort of the centerpiece of some of my ecclesiological work, and seeing how Dr. King embodied and agreed unknowingly with Catholic social teachings. Now, he was already a Christian, but I think, you know, we had something about the anonymous Christian, so maybe I want to call him the anonymous Catholic. I know we've debunked that whole idea of anonymous Christian long ago. God rest her soul. Okay. So what I wanted to do is to look at the social justice mission of the church and Dr. Martin Luther King's Jr.'s legacy. But before I do that, I'm not used to this kind of technology. Before I do that, I want to call to mind what's been going on in our society. I have been sort of in ox with the news, and I haven't seen the news for 4 days, so there's probably things I don't even know about because it's just rolling off so quickly. But the struggles over Mexican immigration in the United States, in a nation of immigrants. I grew up hearing that the United States is a nation of immigrants. I went to school with children who had come from Europe, the Irish and the German, and I heard all of those stories. When we're old, you know, we're the old timers now. But I heard those stories, so I can't make sense out of how a nation of immigrants can be anti-immigrant. Especially when I examine it, they're coming for the same reasons, because of political oppression and economic need. So what's going on? The rise of the radical Islamists called ISIS and their destructive assault of those they consider infidels, not to be confused with the followers of Islam. I always remember we had our crusades before we get too self-righteous. We had to learn about the crusades. So it's the extremists who make a bad name for the religion or for the group. But that's when you think about the slaughters that are going on, the villages that are being emptied out in the name of God or Allah. The conflicts and wars in Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, and France, and someone said, don't forget Bosnia. And it was on the map, and then it gets off the map. Because I'm amazed at how, you know, wars are almost like becoming like newspapers. You have a headline, you attend to it for 2 days, and then we no longer see it. We watch the war on TV for an hour, and then we go back to business as usual. That's the luxury we have as citizens of the United States. But people are dying. Tribal warfare is continuing, because I consider all that tribal stuff. Really, that's basically what it is. The struggles in the Philippines and Haiti, still recovering 5 years later, Haiti. And I'm in touch with the Haitian community in New York, so I'm hearing the stories, and it's really, really, really hard. And I know I'm not touching on all the things, but these are just the things that have come across my mind. The brutal killing of Michael Brown by a white policeman over a minor theft, you know, I'm not supporting thievery, but a life for what, I don't even know what he stole. Was it a candy bar or a bottle of pop or whatever it is? Cigarette, oh, that's even worse. Cigarettes. Should he have been chastised? Yes, but a life for a pack of cigarettes which were probably $2 because they're up expensive now. I don't know how much they're costing. Oh my God, I remember when they were 12 cents a pack. so you know I'm in trouble. The brutal killing of 2 policemen, you know, supposedly in retaliation, killing a Asian and a Hispanic, sitting in their car doing their duty. Not all policemen are bad. So we can't deal with people in categories. The kidnapping of those young girls in Nigeria, Boko Haram, and they're still coming at us saying they're going to come and get more, and they're doing something with boys, and they're slaughtering people. This is just utter madness, at least to my mind. Now, I don't know the background stories of any of these events, and I'm sure if I knew the background stories, it wouldn't be as horrible as they look to me. But I don't know if I could ever have a justification for wanting slaughter. The continued critique and rejection of President Obama. They reject his diplomacy and coalition building. You know, isolationists are we supposed to be? When we have that Statue of Liberty? So how can we be isolationists? What is going on? I've been around so long. I'm one of the old folk, you know, and I'm seeing such massive changes. Politicians are not like they were when I was growing up. And I hate it when the old folks used to say, when I was a child, and it's happening to me now. But it's true. We're in a different world. And it's a world that concerns me because it's a world that is divided on a variety of terms. And it concerns me because as Catholic Christians, we are supposed to be people who strive to unite. Jesus gathered people around them. When that thing happened in Missouri, for once I was speechless for about 20 minutes. I was by myself. But I was alive during that first set of 60s. I was a young person. And I just can't believe that we're there again. And so when I began to review Dr. King's messages, and I didn't get them all, and I'm not going to go through all the texts, but it was interesting to me how current his critique is. So I encourage you, if you haven't bought his collection, it's called I call it his Testament of Hope. It's a collection of his speeches, and it's not that expensive. I had to go and buy it again because I gave my library away, so I now have to buy some of the books. But it's really interesting to see how classical his critique was and how some things have improved, but a lot of things have remained the same. Ecclesiologist who focuses on church mission, and this is my sort of digest statement of what I think we as church people of God are supposed to be about. The evangelization and social justice mission of Jesus is rooted in the triune God, is continued by the Catholic and other Christian churches. That's what we're supposed to be doing. The life and teachings of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s mission is an ongoing evangelization centered on radical love and social justice. That's his message was one of reconciliation. He was trying to get us all together to recognize that we are one family, not by metaphor, but by reality. These ideas of radical love and social justice were preconditions for what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. would call the beloved community, but which we would call the universal communion under the reign of God. See, we can use Catholic language and Protestant, we call it Protestant language, but we're saying the same thing. We are called to be one community of God who love one another universally and unconditionally. And I can hear you say, oh, that's so hard. And yes, it is hard. We are in a globalized world, and that's why I decided to show you some of the images of Jesus, because we all have some way we're talking about Jesus' incarnation when the pictures that we are producing are really reflecting who we are, not who that historical Jesus was. And so I just went on the internet, and I actually have it in my files, that every one of us who are Christians, regardless of our national, racial, cultural, or class background, we see ourselves, we see Jesus in our image, but it's supposed to be a mirror effect. We are made in the image and likeness of God. And we are followers, those of us who are Christians, are followers of Jesus Christ. And we say these words, and we talk about this in church, sometimes daily, sometimes on Sunday, but do we realize what that means when we walk out of our doors? Jesus and Martin Luther King Jr. walked similar paths. Jesus was the perfect embodiment of God's love in human history. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., though not perfect, struggled to embody God's love as a follower of Jesus. So we can sort of identify with him, because no one sitting or standing in this room is perfect. But if you are, let me know during the break. I want to meet you. Tell me how you do it. See, I'm having trouble with this. Luke 4:16 and the following is a short statement of what I call Jesus' mission statement. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim release to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to let the oppressed go free. And he said to them, go and tell John what you have seen and heard. The blind receive their sight, the lame walk, the lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the poor have the good news preached to them. Now just contrast the context statement with the vision statement, with the mission statement. You see the sort of disconnect? Now, I'm not saying there aren't good people who do that. I'm sorry, the people in this room are among the good people who are doing the nursing, who are visiting the sick, who are taking those trips. But unfortunately, we're sort of the Abrahamic minority. And we're not good 24/7. I don't know about you, but I'm not good 24/7. Sometimes I get tired and I get cranky and I don't want to do it right now. And the man came up to me and they came up and said to him, what are the greatest commandments? And he says, thou shalt love the Lord thy God with thy whole heart and with thy whole soul and with thy whole mind. This is the greatest and the first commandment. And the second is like that. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these two commandments depend the whole law and the prophet. As I reflect on the gospel, I said we really can reduce the gospel to one word: love. Love. Being attentive to the needs of the other. Being gracious, and helpful, not only to the family, even the ones that get on your last nerve, not only to the old folks in the family, but to everyone you meet on the street, in the corridors, in the classrooms, in the airports, the bus stations. Can we really love as Jesus, as God loves us? God loves us universally and unconditionally. And we say that our Father prayer, and most of us say it daily. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. I think if you say that prayer and you're vengeful, you're sort of condemning yourself. Jesus is not condemning, you're condemning yourself. But why is it so difficult? And I didn't put it down here, but I was challenged for a few years with the command to love your enemy. But that is a part of our gospel. Love your enemy. And the way I got around it intellectually was to begin to realize that people who perceive themselves as my enemy really weren't my enemies. You know, people who want to get up in your face and, make you their enemy. I recognized that they really were not my enemies. They were my estranged brothers and sisters. And that helped me. When I stopped thinking of them as evil or against me or trying to do something to me, and tried to figure out what was going on, what their need was, and how I could respond to that need, oftentimes that made a difference. Not all the time, but it made a difference. It doesn't matter what people do to you or to me. What matters and what I have control over is how I respond. And I can refuse to respond tit for tat. I can, by the grace of God working in me, really love my enemy. Sometimes I just have to pray for them. Sometimes I have to send them to somebody else. Sometimes I just have to absent myself from their presence. But those can be constructive acts of love. And so we need to meditate on those challenges of the gospel. Pope Francis, are we all delighted? God knew we needed a break, right? He's a delight. He's a complex man. I'm sure all of us have read his background. So he's not the simple little man friar that you see portrayed in the news. He's very profound. He's very seasoned, and he's a Jesuit. That's a Dominican joke. Okay. Oh, you got the same issue. No, but I was educated by Jesuits, and I read all these Jesuit theology books, so you can't hold on to it too long. I looked at chapter 4 of his apostolic thing to see what he was saying about church. The chapter 4 deals with, but the two pieces I picked up that I thought were good for what I'm trying to say is that we are to believe in a Father who loves all men and women with an infinite love, means realizing that he therefore confers upon them an infinite dignity. So we have to recognize the dignity in every person. To believe that the Son of God assumed our human flesh means that each human person has been taken up into the very heart of God. So again, you're not seeing an enemy. You're seeing a child of God. You're seeing your brother and sister. We are called to believe that Jesus shed his blood for us, that removes any doubt about the boundless love. Remember, I talked about that unconditional, universal love, that boundless love which ennobles each human being. Our redemption, though, has a social dimension because God in Christ redeems not only the individual person, but also the social relations existing between men, sick, and women. So one of the errors I'm seeing going on is that we're slipping back into the me and God. Now, don't get me wrong. You do have to relate to Jesus. You do have to pray. You do have to study. You have to look at how Jesus is alive in the world. What, that Protestant gift to us. What would Jesus do? That's serious. But our salvation is not an individual enterprise. It's a communitarian experience. And so we have to take that gift that God has given us when we're having our private prayer and our private study, and we have to do what Jesus did. We have to open up our eyes and see what's going on around us. When you think about the Bible, I'm not talking about chapter and verse, but when you think about what the community recorded about Jesus, where was he in most of those stories? He was on the road. He was meeting the people. He was healing the leper. He was encouraging the blind man. He wasn't locked up in the temple or even in the upper room. He was out meeting the people and responding to their needs. And we can't know their needs if we're not interacting, starting, of course, with your own community here at the university. But we have to go beyond that. Because if this place is like most universities, there's a community just on the edge of it. Is that? So when we're driving in and out of that community, what are the needs there and how are we responding? I'm pretty sure, I have a suspicion that you're already there as a university. But how are we doing it? Yes, it's good to go overseas and go into these various places, exotic places, But what about that bum that's standing on the street with a cigarette or has a tin can when you're driving and we get irritated? Or we want to engage with them. How much money have you collected? I know none of you do that. You have those thoughts. As Pope Francis says to us, reading the scripture also makes it clear that the gospel is not merely about our personal relationship with God, nor should our loving response to God be seen simply as an accumulation of small personal gestures to individuals in need, a kind of charity a la carte, or a series of acts aimed solely at easing our conscience. So he's trying to warn us against me and Jesus only spirituality. Yes, me and Jesus spirituality. But he goes on, it is about loving God who reigns in our world to the extent that he reigns within us. As if he's really the source of our joy, he's really the source of our faith and our hope. The life of the society will be a setting for universal fraternity. Universal fraternity, justice, peace, dignity. Both Christians preaching and life then are meant to have an impact on society. Okay. So first what I'm doing is sort of looking at what we, from our Catholic Christian perspective, what's in our portfolio about how we're to interface with the world as Catholic Christians, as Christians of other faiths. And of course, we have Catholic social teachings, which elaborate that more explicitly. I know everybody here knows Catholic social teachings. How many know Catholic social teachings already? Oh, I guess everybody. Raise your hand high. Come on, get a little action. You get warm at least. Okay. What they are, Catholic social teachings really is sort of the digest that we give you is sort of a short guide to all of those teachings that have the papal teachings, starting with Rerum Novarum back in the 19th century. All of those teachings, those papal teachings, those episcopal teachings, and that's the role of the Pope and the bishops, to teach us. You know, we want them to do all these other things. Their primary role is to teach us. And then we, the Christians and the true, are supposed to listen. We're supposed to read and research, and then we're supposed to put legs to the words. Now, they don't get off either. They're supposed to do it too. But, you know, I hear so many people talking about the bishops. The bishops don't do this, and the bishops don't do that, and they don't understand the poor sisters and all that. That's not what church is about. Let's not attend to all of that. There are people that can have those dialogues, and that's in their portfolio. Let them do it. Let us keep ourselves focused on being Christians in the streets, Christians in the schools, being attentive to one another. And the college students, you can do it. You can really do it. I know it's hard. I mean, I'm a university professor, and I used to give them a lot of homework, so so I know. But I used to tell my students, take off Friday night or Saturday night. You can't work 7 days a week. Just take some break. You can help your classmates. You can be attentive. I was listening to that music and thinking about college-age students and how you can get very discouraged. Not only undergrads, but grad students, even doctoral students. I've been there. So I can know how discouraging it. And just a kind word or a gesture, or if you know somebody's researching on a topic and you see something when you're doing your topic, you know, give them the reference. That's not cheating. That's living in community. We're supposed to be a community of scholars, a community of Christian people. So we don't have to compete to get 1 point higher than the person that's sitting next to it. It's not about that. How do we attend Catholic social teachings? I'm having trouble with this little machine. Run them down quickly. Principle of human dignity. Principle of respect for human life. Principle of association, participation, preferential protection for the poor and the vulnerable. Principle of solidarity. You know, when you're solid, it's like 1 Corinthians in the Bible. When one part is hurting, the other part's hurting. Are we in solidarity with one another in this nation, in this global world? We can't go isolationist. Although I hear cries out there, why is he going over there? Why are we sending money there? Why are we sending money to these folks there? It's really a regression. Principle of human equality, the principle of the common good. There's a debate about how many they are, but what they're trying to do is say, what are those pastorals? What are those letters? How are they? What are those principles of relating? Every human being is created in the image of God and redeemed by Jesus Christ, and therefore is invaluable and worthy of respect as a member of the human family. They don't have to earn it. They don't have to conform to what my expectations are. The very fact that they are human, the very fact that God has created them, I need to respect their dignity. Now think of that laundry list of concerns that I had at the beginning. Do you see how some of those things that we're experiencing in our history is a lack of respect for the human dignity of people? Now, she told you about my look. It's not like you don't react, but can you react in a way that's constructive? Can we do it in an interpersonal? Can we ask our policemen, and many of them already do, act in a constructive way? Yes, we want them there to protect us. Yes, we want them to keep law and order. But even if he's a thief, he's still a man. Even if she's a thief, equal opportunity thievery, they do go in those dress stores and pop, you know. And you're arresting them. Can you do it in a way that respects their dignity? Okay. I'm not going to read all this because we'll be here all night. What I did was juxtaposition our Catholic social principles with some of the quotes from Dr. King. What does he say about human dignity? There must be a recognition of the sacredness of the human personality, deeply rooted in our political and religious heritage, is the conviction that every man and woman is an heir to the legacy and dignity and worth. Our Hebraic Christian tradition refers to this inherent dignity of man in the biblical word, the image of God. Everyone we meet, whether they know it or not, is made in the image of God. And we are made in the image of God collectively. And that image of God that prevails in the Christian tradition is the Trinitarian image. Profound unity with distinctness and diversity. So we don't have to be homogenized. We don't have to hold strict norms or criteria. There can be a variety. And of course, we know culture, race, class, social location. We have all developed. We've come from different indigenous kinds of cultures from our country. And there's an American culture emerging, but that American culture is not a monolith. But can we love the person who is different from ourselves? Do we recognize that basic unity, that basic humanity, that they are made in the image of God? In the old school, we used to talk about the indwelling of the Trinity, the indwelling of the Holy Spirit in everyone, whether they recognize it or not, vivified by baptism and the sacraments for sure. But by the very act of creation, there is a trace of the divine DNA in every living being, whether they are Catholic, Christian, religious, or non-believer. Every person, from the moment of conception to natural death, has inherent dignity and a right to life consistent with that dignity. That's what Cardinal Bernardine from Chicago used to call the consistent ethic of life. We must be concerned about the fetus, yes. We must be concerned about the woman who finds herself in a situation that she thinks she needs to do an abortion. How are we there to support her and help her get through this challenging thing? But after that baby is born, after we've saved it, are we there for the long haul? And it's not just the women who are thinking about abortion. Look around. Who are the people, the old folks, the young folks, the challenged? Because you don't have to be old to be needy. Do I have a witness? You don't have to be old to be needy. You can be 22 and have a need. Yes. You can be 32 and have a need. You can be any age. But are we attentive to and are we respectful to the human life of every person we encounter? And what does Dr. King have to say? Oh, dear. I look forward confidently to the day when all who work for living will be with no thought to their separateness. He's talking about that day. Some of you young folks don't remember. There was a day where black folks and white folks did not live in the same neighborhood, where black folks and white folks couldn't go to the same school. And it was down south and up south, where black folks and white folks could not go to the same Christian church. And this was not about cultural preferences. It was social convention. And in some places, there were laws. You know about the segregation laws. You know, and unfortunately, those separations is not all gone. I do teach in New Orleans, and yes, it's beautiful, and we like to go to Bourbon Street and all that. I lived there for 10 years, and I live in Chicago. And it's different than it was 50 or 60 years ago. The boundaries have shifted. There are more communities where people are interacting, but there are still places where if you are a woman or a man of color, they're going to come up to you and say, what are you doing in this neighborhood? This is in 2015. I'm sure all of you have heard about Gates going to his house, and they wanted to know who he was and why he was going into his house, because they couldn't imagine someone like him, meaning he had brown skin, living in that neighborhood. And that whole thing, that the earlier case before Michael Brown, the kid was going to visit his father. He was in his neighborhood. So there's this skin color racism. And it's not just about African Americans. It's my brown brothers and sisters get it. And if you have too much of a tan, you might get it. I'm serious, because, you know, white folks come in different shades. And if you've got olive complexion and they're not sure what you are, you can be subjected to skin color racism. And all of your rights as a human being are put under suspect. All of this freedom is limited. And it's not 24/7 and every day. Now, it hasn't happened to me recently, but I've been stopped on my little trek from Adrian to Chicago, pulled over by the police. And I was trained by my mother and father, don't be writing dead. Yes, sir. No, sir. Here's my license, sir. Can I give you anything else, sir? Whatever you do, you get out of that situation and report it when you get home. Don't give them any occasion to get rough with you. Don't stand on your righteousness and be dead right. It's serious. And that's unfortunately, that's still going on. What we see in the newspaper just lets other people who don't realize that. And many of my good white friends don't realize that. I remember ancient history. I was at a university, we won't say where. Yeah, she didn't tell you everything. I was at a university, and I was on campus, and the security guards on the campus were always coming up to me wanting to know who I was and why I was there. And my classmates got so embarrassed, after a while we would be walking together, they would jump in and intercede before they could ask the question. They couldn't imagine me being a student, and it wasn't Washington, D.C., by the way. The principle of association. We are social beings. Economic, politics, law, policy. What all of this affects the human dignity and the capacity of individuals to grow. Now, all of us know, I told you I wasn't going to tell you anything you didn't know. All of us know about the economic disparities, right? Economic disparities between women's salaries, economic disparities from people of color. It's not even. You can do the same work and not get the same paycheck. You can have the same credentials but don't have the access. That's structural inequality. You're cut out of the association. You can't flow. Is that godly? Catholic social principle said you should be able to associate. You should be able to use your gifts, your talents with all the other people. King reminds us that freedom is never voluntary given to the oppressor. It must be demanded. And so that's what that movement so many years ago that King led was about. When you think about who King was, you know, middle-class little black kid, grew up in the church, second-generation minister, highly educated, you know, in college at 15, so you know he wasn't a dummy. He died when he was 39. Think about that. And yet they were beating him and calling him all kinds of names that were not his name. But he learned that as people who were structurally oppressed by systemic racism and patterns of segregation, because that's what they were struggling against, we could be limited. Now, we definitely created a community outside that community. That's how we strived. We were still going to college. We were doing, my mother and born in 1911, father, they went to college. They were born in 1911, but they were college students. Because my grandparents did what they had to do, bought property, saved their money, and sent their kids to school because education was a key value. And education for the community was the buzzword. You get educated, and you use those skills to help the community. Don't you come back here trying to act like you don't know who you are. That's a tradition, despite. And that's polis is what brings the city together. I'm not talking about electoral politics. It's everything is full of politics. It's how systems of relationships. But King rightfully said that we had to organize ourselves. And when you're reading some of this paper, it took a little time for people to organize themselves and come together and to do this collective action, you know, because there was some in-house, you know, somebody wanted to be the leader and all this kind of stuff, and who's going to lead and who's going to speak and all this kind of stuff. But the oppression was so bad that they had to get through the internecine warfare for a cause that was bigger. And they had to risk. Now, I'm sure, how many of you seen Selma? So I don't have to go through all that. If you haven't seen it, it's a good piece. It helps, it takes us back and helps us remember. And the young folk who can't imagine, most of my students, when we talk about this, they can't imagine this. Now, this recent event is sort of bringing it up to date. This is your 60s. But when you see Selma, you'll see what the people were going through because of the laws and the attitudes that had begun to fester about white supremacy and black inferiority, assumed. Did I go back? Or I don't think so. Participation and association are related. But we have an obligation to participate. Because I knew and was told the stories of how difficult it was for the Negro to get a vote. I vote every time, even when there's nobody to vote for. Because it's difficult at times. But because I know my ancestors got beat, got rejected, died so I could vote, there is no way I don't get up on electoral day and vote. Do we know I tried it the week before to do a crash study, get that ballot and figure out what's going on. But voting is part of our democratic republic, which many people are abdicating. People are not taking the vote serious across the cultural, racial, class lines. They're too busy. And then they wonder why we're dissatisfied with our government. And government bashing is not constructive. We have to vote in the people that we think will carry ahead the agenda that's consistent with our Catholic Christian beliefs. And I know there's separation of church and state, but your moral values, your value system needs to be reflected in that voting box. And we may have different opinions, and I don't care about that. But vote. That's one of the privileges we have in the United States. Now, I travel a little bit around the world, And I remember coming home several times and I said, you know, I'd rather live in a flawed democracy than a flawed dictatorship. We don't really appreciate the freedom of speech that we have, and sometimes we misuse that freedom. But we really do. I'm not going to, I don't think we're all that in bad chips because we have our problems. But our freedom is very key, and participating in the electoral process is one of the things that sustains that freedom, that sustains the quality of life for ourselves and the other members of our nation. King recognized the power of political involvement. He had predicted that when the Negro citizens learns that united and organized pressure can achieve measurable results, he will make his influence felt. Out of the consciousness, the political power of the aroused minority will be enhanced and consolidated. Now, I know some people are still upset about Obama and his abortion plaque and all that kind of stuff. But many black folks voted for Obama not because he was black only. He was intelligent. He had public office. He was a fresh voice. And it wasn't black folks that voted him in. They could have done it by themselves. Other enlightened people of different cultural, ethnic groups also voted for him with some kind of hope. But we have to keep his feet to the fire. That's part of our political thing. When he's doing something well, celebrate it. If he's doing something we have a problem about, question it. And there's all kinds of polls. I mean, I love the computer because you get all kinds of stuff to express yourself and to send things in. They've made it easy for me to be a citizen, to write into the Senate, write into my congressman. You know, if I had to take out a piece of paper and sit up there and compose a letter, I'd never be doing anything. But now we've got it on the computer so we can do it. But take the time. And the poor. We talk about the poor in the 2/3 world. Oh dear, what happened there? Somebody's going to have to come and help me. We talk about the poor in the 2/3 world, but we have an extreme amount of poverty in the United States. I'm sure there's a Catholic Campaign for Human Development page that gives you the annual statistics of poverty in the United States, and it breaks it down by class, race, gender, area. There are a lot of poor people in the United States. They're one step away from being on the street. Some of them are living in, and it's the way we've constructed our highways in our neighborhoods and stuff. We don't always see them. And some of the people next door to you are poor. They lost their money with this last recession, but they're keeping up appearances. So we need to be attentive to the poor and figure out what we can do individually and what we can do politically to respond to those needs, to provide so that they can participate in quality education, that they can participate in quality health care. And if you're not doing it because we're Christians and we are our brothers and sisters keep, do it out of self-interest. All of us have had these horrible, many of us have had these horrible flu and pneumonia and stuff. And why? Because we're out there shaking hands with and talking to. So if somebody it's in your self-interest to keep people healthy because that helps you stay healthy. I'm serious. Now, we should be doing it because of our love of God and blah, blah, blah. But do it out of self-interest. I don't care why we do it, but let us try to be right. Let us be concerned about the poor. There is something wrong with this gadget. I don't know what it is. Martin Luther King was concerned about the poor and vulnerable, and it's so tiny I can't even read it. But they're talking about the summer of poverty, and the point that I wanted to make on this is when we help the poor, it's very important for us to let the poor help themselves. Now, there's a certain amount of, you feel good when you do something for someone else. That's your take-home pay. But sometimes we don't listen to the poor person. We think we know what they need, and we think they need what we want. And sometimes that's totally off the mark. And so we have to take some time to engage the person and find out what their felt need is and respond to that first. And as we befriend them, as we see them and relate to them as truly our brother and sister, then by that relationship, not dropping the basket, by that relationship, then we can walk with them and then move them to share with them what our thoughts are. So it becomes a mutual relationship where you're learning from them, they're learning from you, and everybody has a better quality of life. We may have the material goods, the money, the back energy for the older people, but the older people have the wisdom and the knowledge, and they can tell you, and it's not, you're not going to have the younger people, you're not going to have the same life we have. But there are certain things that happen. There's some fundamental dynamics that if you listen to the old folks, they'll tell you how the song said, how to hold on when things look bad, because they can tell you they've had 16 crises, but they're still standing. So they can share their experience and shore up your hope. And they need, I know I enjoy being around young people because it keeps me alert, knows what the question, you got the word on the street. I don't always get the word on the street, but I want to hear it because that helps me know how I should be responding to the felt needs of the young adults and the young people I meet. So if we just do the age thing, but we can do the culture thing, we can do the gender thing. And what is going on with this thing? It's supposed to be telling me to stop. That may be it. King talked about community action. We do best that which we do together. Rugged individualism hasn't worked for a long time. We do need one another. We are our brothers and sisters. Where I have strengths and you have weaknesses, I can help you. Where I have weaknesses and you have strength, you can help me. And how do we connect up like that in these days? Stewardship, do you have more than you need? Do you abuse what you own? And I'm doing a personal examine here. I know I still have more clothes than I need. The good sister has more clothes than she needs. Okay, and I've given away clothes 3 and 4 times. Do I have food in my closet that I'm not using? Don't wait until it's 5 months old before you bring it to the food basket. How do we use the money we have? Now, I'm on fixed income now, so this is going to be a new experience for me in terms of the money. But how do we use well whatever it is we have? And how do we share our surplus with the other? Subsidiarity, that to me is bone marrow deep loyalty, thick and thin loyalty, identifying with the issues of the neighbor, of the classmate, helping them get the help they need even when you can't do it. That's just a deeper form. All of this is relational, if you'll notice. It's all about how we relate to the other to help the other be who he or she can be. And all of us are in need of the other. And we go back, human equality. That doesn't mean we're identical. We are equal in our human identity. Our gifts vary. But there's no person who God didn't gift with something. Every person that God created has some gift to share with us, even as we have gifts to share with the other. So I just don't understand anybody who thinks they're superior to anybody else. I just don't. I know I've met people, we all have, who really think they're God gifts to the intellectual world. And they are smart. But they're smart in some areas and they're totally ignorant in others. I know that's true of myself. I know some things, and there are other things I'm like zero. And I need people to help me. So what's the arrogance about? You didn't give yourself your intelligence. That's a gift from God. You didn't pay, most of us didn't pay for our own tuition. That was a gift from our parents or our families. Now, some of us are working hard, but none of us are doing anything totally by ourselves. So let's not waste ourselves with the sin of pride and arrogance. Let us see our brothers and sisters as people who are like ourselves, though different. And of course, our buzzword for Catholic social teaching is the common good. How do the decisions we make, how do the way we gather affect not just myself, but how does it help the community? How does it move the level of life for the community? I have to say this, we've been going through these for like last, I would say 10 or 15 years. Individualism, materialism, and narcissism. My God. And it's not just the young folk. I had to watch myself. Because it's very easy to become self-absorbed. And when we become self-absorbed, we fail to see the neighbor. So how can we respond to the neighbor? How can we work to the common good? Nada. So we sort of have to put some of these buzzwords. We have to go back and pick up this. Much of this is you can find in your books and stuff, in your classes, your ethics classes. How do we take all of this Bible living, this Christian living, this other directed, how do we take those notions off the pages of the Bible, off the pages of the psychology, sociology books, and make it alive? Jesus came into human history to show us how to live. Martin studied about Jesus, became a minister, and read the society and saw the injustices and was not afraid to use his gift of oratory and his strength to walk, to call the nation's attention to the social injustices, not only here in the United States where he was focusing on racism, but all over the world when he paid attention to the racism, not just in the United States, but all over the world. And he paid attention to the war. I remember when he started talking about the war, people told him, oh, you're only supposed to be talking about Negroes. See, you put you in a box. The Negroes can only talk about Negroes. White people can talk about everybody. But isn't that part of that white supremacist ideology that we embody? Somebody wants to narrow what I'm interested in. Am I supposed to be interested in this kind of sport? My parents said, hey, the world's yours, I have many interests. Yes, I'm interested in black people and Negroes and brown people. But I'm also interested in my Irish brother and sister and my Italian brothers and sisters because I grew up with them and I knew they were struggling at that time. So we are all brothers and sisters. It's not about race. It's not about class. And rich people have problems, let me tell you. And it's not just money. It's not just money. Middle-class people have problems. I was a psychiatrist social worker. I listened. And it wasn't about money, but it was relationships and being valued, which is what's at the heart of each of us. King is a model of a Christian. He was a prophet because he read the signs of the times and spoke out for justice. But we're all called to read what's going on and respond in the way that we can to be constructive contributors to the well-being of the neighborhood, the city, the nation, and in today's world, the global world. And so we need to be attentive to what's going on and don't, just be worried about the United States. We are already one. And so it's in our best interest. If you're not going to do it out of charity and love, in your own self-interest, be attentive to what's going on. Because what's happening to our neighbor today will be in our backyard tomorrow. They're already here. And you know what I'm talking about. ISIS is already here. You know that. We don't know where they are, what they are, but they're here. Sleeper cells, the communists did it here. Why would we think that the ISIS people would not have sleeper cells here? I don't know where they are, and I'm not paranoid. But they have technology. We are closer, but let our closeness be a closeness of love, not a closeness for destruction. I hope I haven't been yelling at you. I hope I've been giving you something to think about and reflecting some of your thoughts. And let us hold one another in prayer as we leave this place and as we move forward from this day forward. Let the church say, amen. Amen.
Thank you, Sister Jamie Phelps, again. Thank you for sharing of your expertise. Thank you for challenging us, and thank you for your message of love. On behalf of the University of Dayton and the UD Speaker Series, we have a small token of appreciation. So again, thank you for being here, and everyone have a good evening.